teaser, and it was
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Doing the BNI thing.
Okay, there we go. Well, folks, I think we are live on Quantum Leap. Are you seeing the clearance here? Um,
Yeah.
well, yeah, David and Corey here, and we're going to get right to it. Well, just want to give a quick summary. If you're new to the show, this is really about business development and, success principles and kind of, I should probably have a little succinct script that we read for station identification. We're gradually finding our way. But today we're going to talk about just a quick overview of a strategy for success, the sourcing that went into that book. And then most of the show is going to be on um, referral marketing, which I actually like using a different term for it, but really I call it building $1 million network is what I'm calling it as a natural marketer myself. And Corey's an expert on that, but we're going to get to that. I just wanted to see if you could introduce yourself, Corey, and tell us a little bit about,
Yeah. Hey, everyone.
you.
It's Corey over here, and Corey Knott, and I am a business partnership coach with Take Wing Coaching and co-owner of that business with my wife, and fighting with my camera here today because I have an office bird who likes to take wing and knock over my camera whenever she gets an opportunity. So it's just moving
That
around.
bird, that bird makes it entertaining. So, so folks, recently on the show, Corey was and I were going over my brief handbook called A Strategy for Success. And I'll put the link, it's available on my website. And I put those two episodes of us going through what that is. But I realized the one thing that's missing is a lot of the sourcing. I did put some sourcing in the book, but so much of it is written by inspiration from really in person, kind of watching people, but also really full bodies of work, so I could almost do like a whole hour on this of everything. It's kind of like asking a musician what inspired them, and it's like hundreds or thousands of people over the years. But I think for this particular book, Corey was a huge inspiration. I feel like what makes it new in the field is combining what Corey knows with what is kind of existing in print. And I say like the core value stuff, a lot of the stuff you teach on Lyft and in person, Corey is not really written that much in a book, people
Yeah.
talk about it. Like, have you seen a good chapter on core values, for example? It's kind of buried in some of John Maxwell's. He touches on it, but I don't, so I was excited to put that in the book and just really introduce it. And if they want to get more, they can talk to an expert like you or others, maybe an incentive if they live outside the Bay Area and they want to go. I mean, you can really serve people all over the world, but um, it was kind of modeled after a couple books, really the work of Earl Nightingale. I think I would say has the biggest influence on some of that book. And this is kind of a short handbook called Lead the Field, which is like a worksheet, very similar to my book, but I'd say it's just a different approach. This came out in like the 60s. So I wanted to updated version. I saw how important that was to update it. And here's another one. I don't know if you've listened to this book on Audible, Corey. It's called Essence of Success. And this comes from his radio shows in the 60s, where
Mm.
he talks about all these success principles. It's really what is the essence of success. And, he was a big influence on Bob Proctor, who I would say is, Nightingale, Bob Proctor, then Napoleon Hill, going back to this Think and Grow Rich, were the biggest influences. But some of the new things in the marketing, kind of where I'm going next, I really think I see John Maxwell as a big influence. This 21 Laws of Leadership, that there exists. It's a bit controversial, but I know you and a lot of folks who would agree with us about, maybe Jack Canfield or others, that there are these principles that are kind of laws that if you do them, you will it'll make you, successful over time. And, it's I say scientifically proven because if you wanted to prove some of this stuff, you study the lives of successful people, and they all have some of these things more or less. So I feel like there could be more studied and even prove it in like almost a hard scientific way if you wanted to. But in the meantime, we're kind of focused on social science. So I'll just go through a couple more books and we're going to move on to referral marketing. This book, Limitless, this is not like this is kind of a whole his system. Each of these authors has their own system. I kind of came from the world of philosophy where there are really hard systems that are kind of trying to be fully enclosed, like Schopenhauer or Nietzsche
Right.
or Nietzsche like didn't have a system. So I tried to develop like the beginnings of a system, and I didn't give the whole foundations. I would say von Mises was an influence, his human action about that there are things that drive human action was an influence, and he gets
Hmm.
kind of a bad rap because a lot of people don't want to believe that for whatever reason. But if you check out his book, Human Action, it's hugely influential, and that there are things that make us tick and motivations. And, that's kind of like, I guess, like the a priori proofs, so to speak. So getting a little bit deep here, psycho-cybernetics, you've heard me talk about that. That's self-image. Um, which if you want to know about self-image, just read this book, and that's pretty much we haven't advanced past that. Nobody's as good of an expert. And then the last one, of course, is Bob Proctor. I went through a program with him and my business coach that was hugely influential, and then I kind of really traced all his sourcing, and that's how I found Nightingale and Napoleon Hill. He was the big influences. So this book, You Were Born Rich. I'd actually read the audio program. This is from the 80s, or listen to it on Audible. And another ABCs of success. And this is really success principles right here. This outlines more. I mean, there's 12 chapters in the book, but there's really, dozens and a lot more. And I think that's what confuses the field. That a lot of these success principles are kind of related, or there's different ways to explain them. But I tried to just boil down like the core, and I didn't put really like a huge uh like footnoting system in the book or whatever. So I just want to talk about those influences. But we'll leave it there for now. If you have any thoughts on your influences of how you came up with some of the stuff, and or on this kind of area of your research, if you have anything I left out, feel free to chime in. Yeah.
Yeah, I listen to books, I download them, I listen to summaries and so on. And I think I've been focused more over the years over the kind of the relationship of, people with other people and communication, and then on the inside, internal communication. So a lot of NLP books, but I don't necessarily recommend them. There is one that came with my Mind Sonar program, which isn't too hard of a read. They've got some very strange cartoons in it, and it's mastering communications into the wisdom of meta programs. And as much as it sounds kind of dry and boring, it's actually quite exciting to kind of see how people tick. And and of course, I use that as part of the Mind Sonar program that I do for people. And then any book on disc that you can find, like Tony Alessandra and various other types of experts in that arena, and just how to communicate and how to understand people and to have a better understanding of yourself, it's all really good stuff. But because it's as much as we can hear about all the leadership and make friends, win friends, and influence people, there's also just some basic practical tools we can put in place. The Strengths Finders books are also really worth doing. You buy the little book, you take the test, and then you get a result, and you start learning, what are your strengths, right? Mine are all just around information and strategy. And so I can see where my weaknesses are in activation and getting things started. And I'm very much in futurism. I'm sure David and I are very similar in that regard. Uh, so I'm really big on more about self-understanding, and then the other books are really good tools on having a focal point for that understanding, because it's too easy to get stuck in learning and not doing.
Yeah, I think the quickest, most efficient way, and I know not everybody can afford it or wants to spend the money, is to get a coach because I think we all have some weak points where we're especially weak that if you kind of get up to speed on those first, I'd say daily practice, I wasn't really good on. And, of course, that purpose and core values, it's can be hard to do that work on your own completely. It just rarely happens. So,
Yeah,
you know, or get a friend in. Even if you join BNI, for example, Mike Macedonia will talk to you. Or you're here. Just a little bit of knowledge goes a long way, and some of those
yeah.
things. Even just doing a one-to-one with Cory or something will get you going in the right direction. Um,
Well,
so
that's another good
yeah.
book, by the way. It starts with why, with Simon Sinek and his videos on that. I was just reading somebody's email today, and this person was saying how much they love their business and what they do, and they're like, "Do you know your why?" Well, my why is I just really feel good about what I'm doing, and it's like, well, this isn't a juicy story, right? This is like you can see the emotion there, but you can't. There's no story behind it. It's like, what's the truth? And I think this person doesn't really know, and that's worth knowing if you're truly going to communicate with other people your why.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know your
and
core values and vision and all that. Yeah.
yeah. I think that's one of the most important places to start because you unlock that fuel, we call it, and I cite you guys in the book about that you really got the kind of unlock this passion that's going to help you get to all that other stuff because there's a lot of things, and if you keep working at it you learn all this stuff and you perfect it over time. So but the most important part's to get excited about it and get the inclination to do it instead of just I'm just going to kind of I'm not into that. I don't A lot of people just don't believe in it. They don't want to give it a chance. But if you do give it a chance, there's a lot that can be gained,
I think it's
because
just scary for people, honestly. I think
yeah,
it's sometimes difficult to go down those paths and not be sure there's anything there. And then if there is something there, what are you going to uncover? It's a journey, right? And it has to be done right.
yeah, yeah. That's why I think having a coach is so important. It'll save you a lot of mistakes and rabbit holes that'll sidetrack you. And also a lot of books that you don't necessarily need. It's not
Right.
really about books. You can just get a coach and read 5 or 10 books and know more than somebody who read books their whole life and never got there. So it's
Right.
kind of read the stuff you need. But um yeah, well, let's get to the referral
Oh
marketing.
yeah.
I think we'll probably take another session on this. This can be kind of part one of introducing it, but I know had we shared that clip of Rebecca Galvin on there. She was great about and what's going on in B&I, but I really feel like I don't like the name referral marketing because I think a lot of people confuse it with either like network marketing or something that it's not really. It's really about, I say, kind of building $1 million network. It's really building the network that is going to propel your success. And it's not only referrals and business, it's knowledge and it's camaraderie and friendships. So I just I mean it's the what makes it different from a normal network is if you have that referral aspect because that's business related. It's marketing, but it's different from normal marketing. So I just wanted to ask you about how you see referral marketing, things like in B&I and that type of networking, different from other forms of marketing, and do you see it as more effective or a complement or a supplement?
I think it is the most effective form of marketing. It's you get to work with people who are warmed up for you, and you get to control who you work with. If you practice a good referral marketing plan, you decide, who are you going to be your clients. That's not the easiest thing to do. It takes time and it takes quite a bit of energy. It is I won't say, well, it can be a slow process. It can be a fast one, but it takes time. It's a trust building, relationship building exercise. I started 20 years ago and I've had enormous success in some ways. In other ways, it's like sometimes I'm recreating the wheel because I'm doing something new in my business and finding the challenges of feeling like I'm just getting started. Yet I do know a lot of people it helps. But it's really the best and most creative form of marketing for, and also the most cost effective, I think. It takes very little money, just more time.
Yeah, you do have to maintain it, and I do think if you do it effectively, you don't necessarily need hardly any other form of marketing except for some nominal, maybe business cards and website or something just to make it easier to build your network, so to speak. But even then, you don't really need it depending on what your business is. Um, I wanted to talk about a myth here that a lot of people think networkers are just kind of born that way and they're not made. Me joining B and I really showed me that it's really all about even if you're an introvert, you can be some of the best networkers are introverts, for example, and they may say, I never thought I'd be a good networker, but what do you think about this aspect of
Yeah. Well, when I
becoming?
do visitor days for BNI and for other groups now, I do some talking for other groups and building networks and so on. Because of what I have done in BNI, I get invited to speak to other networking groups. I'm like, how can we build and do better? And I always tell my story, which is, I mean, just to kind of put it briefly, I started my business in 1998. I never did any networking. Finally, I think somebody reached out to me from a chamber and said, "Come and do our mixer." And I went to the mixer and I hated it. It was a hot room, too many people. Felt like I was just sweating. It was probably, a hot summer day, and the food was okay, but and then it's just like I didn't really know how to meet anybody, and the kind of work I did was hard to talk about. And maybe if I did any networking, it was kind of online with people kind of in my industry. And then finally, in fact, that's how I met somebody who then invited me to BNI. Surprisingly, she lived close by, even though we could have been thousands of miles away. And I finally agreed to visit probably about 2 years later, maybe a year and a half later. And that's when I realized, okay, I like this structure. This is neat. I can make this work and I can meet some people. And it was a little bit lonely in my business. I didn't have a lot of friends. I'm very introverted. And having been through a divorce with a ex-wife who took all my friends that I had, except the one best friend I have who was busy raising his kids and I rarely ever saw. It was like I felt like I could use this. And for the first 7 years of being in BNI, other than meeting my wife and marrying her and having that huge benefit, um, I was pretty quiet. I didn't really do a lot with BNI, but I got some really huge referrals from networking and realized that this is something I wanted to stick to. So I don't think I think you just got to find the place for you. If you're the type of person who doesn't like to get out a whole lot and be in rooms full of people, there are places to go for that and do that because being alone in an office all day, it's just not healthy. And we can't do a lot of this online very easily.
Yeah, yeah, agreed. And I'll just say one reason I got into it even more so is you see everybody who's has success out there in the world that you see in these circles, but also the people you read about, they all have these kind of unique networks. They're all part of a network. It's not just them. They have people out there speaking more highly and better about them than they do about themselves, and that's just priceless. For example, look at Mike Macedonia or Don Lyons, how their reputation just precede them. Same with you also in BNI. A lot of people know you who maybe met you 5 or 10 years ago. So
Yeah, as I
word
said,
of mouth.
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Go ahead. I was done. Yeah.
I was gonna say, as I said, my strengths, my core kind of way of operating is very information, very futuristic, I tend to kind of live in my own head and like to talk big ideas and philosophy and stuff. And making money is great, and I could do that and so on. But I'm not really that kind of focused go-getter entrepreneur. I like more of the learning side of things, and maybe my early career was more focused on that. And so, what am I trying to say here? I am not the type of person to have a large circle of people around me. That wouldn't have happened if I hadn't been in really heavily involved in networking and working it the right way. So I don't have to spend so much time on it and developing a reputation. So I feel like, in some ways, for somebody who grew up very unpopular and kind of that lonely kid who occasionally had, one friend and really was kind of lost for a long time. I feel like I'm popular, I've got some popularity and it's nice to go out and be noticed and seen when I go to these things, and I get to meet people I really like and talk to them about, what they're moving forward on in their life. And so I think networking can bring a lot of joy to people who may not realize that they can do it. It doesn't have to be about selling your business. It can be just about meeting people who are really uh, kind of in the same set of values and wanting to move forward. That's where I say it's just so inspiring, to be around people like that.
Yeah, and it's also some of these we don't always want to be out there, but it's you become part of a system that
Yeah,
works and it helps you do the things that you don't necessarily want to do all the time, but
right.
you actually need to do to be successful. And I think that's what it makes it kind of palatable because of the other fun aspects of it. Like,
Yeah,
I think a big thing is certain events, like if I know you're going to be there, a couple other people are you're close with and being I, then it helps you meet other people. So it's kind of like teamwork, and we can
yeah,
talk about this stuff. So
yeah.
um yeah, how can somebody get started with learning about referral marketing? Say they're a small business owner out there, they have no idea still what this is. What would you suggest for how to
Or
get
reach out.
involved? Yeah.
Yeah, reach out to you or I for an invite. There's lots of, I mean, there's BNI groups, there's other, programs that we're parts of. And so there may be a good fit just to come and meet people, right? That's really what it's about. I was actually just so now I'm living up here in Vallejo and there's no, BNI groups. The chamber is kind of active, but it's got its thing. And somebody was posting on the community like, I don't know anybody here. I'm feeling very lonely, so I'm putting together a meetup for small business owners. And I'm like, here's an opportunity to, maybe introduce them to my network and help build some, connections up in this way because it's not going on. So there are a lot of people out there who it's kind of been lonely, especially since COVID, right? We're kind of all stuck online and we don't know where to go. And online networking it's okay, but it's difficult to build relationships through the screen. Right? You need that face to face sometimes. At least you have to have some of it, otherwise it's hard to do it all. So yeah, I'd say just reach out to us or look online for groups. But I think it's always good to find somebody or at least you can talk to about it and see what's a good fit.
Yeah, yeah, and there's no obligation. Just come visit, and Cory and I can link you up with the chapter. If it's not our chapter, it's another chapter person in the Bay Area or even beyond that.
Yeah, yeah,
Mike and Don, they know people all over the country, so um yeah, well, we're gonna leave it there. We'll return to this topic at some point again. We haven't talked about it in a little while. But we'll leave the first segment of Quantum Leap there, and we're gonna bring on um, our surprise guest for the AI. We're going to be bringing him in and going back live here. So Corey and I are going to sign off this first segment. We'll see you in a couple minutes. Thank you.
thank you.